Capcom, take a bow. As a matter of fact, you deserve a standing ovation. Seriously, there is a point where a game developer surpasses all of your expectations and breaks through any barriers that you thought existed. They will show you what the next evolution of gaming will be in story, mechanics, graphics, and entertainment. Resident Evil 4 Remake might be Capcom's magnum opus as far as the Resident Evil series goes. I think it definitely gives Resident Evil 2 Remake a run for its money as a shining example of the highest caliber of game creation and shines a light on what is possible. RE4 Remake is an astounding dive into the potential of what a remake is now and in the future. I first played the original Resident Evil 4 years ago on the Nintendo Wii, using the nunchuck to shoot enemies by pointing at the screen, and it was actually tons of fun. I thought the game was really good then, and it surpassed my expectations at the time, so I was really interested in what the remake would do and how they would interpret the classic. And oh boy, did they get it right. The opening scene reaches out and strangles you with the dreaded atmosphere that suffocates your senses. You're in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by a thick woodland landscape. The dimly moonlit path ahead draws you toward a gated entry surrounded by cawing crows that stare you down and keep a watchful eye. A butchered deer, eliminated by a few candles, sits on display, almost as a warning to those who enter. You finally crawl under the barbed wire to be met with an extremely rundown lodge that seems all but abandoned. There's only one way to enter, and before you crack the door, you take a deep breath as your imagination runs wild as to what you will meet on the other side. This is what RE4 does repeatedly and is arguably its greatest strength. It builds grisly expectations and pits you in nightmare situations that any normal person would run far away from. But you are no normal person. You are Leon S. Kennedy, a veteran of this world as one of the protagonists of RE2, an official killer of anything Umbrella related. You will be continuously tested in frightful yet exhilarating ways. Strap yourself in, as it will be one hell of a ride. So you play as Leon, a survivor of the Raccoon City zombie outbreak. The president's daughter is missing, and Leon is tasked with locating and extracting her. Thus begins his story. Leon is a pretty solid character. The amount of one-liners that harken back to 80s and 90s action movies is still there, and of course embraced consciously by Capcom.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
As that was part of the original's charm. He's tough and doesn't back down or doubt himself, and instead leads fully into any situation no matter the odds, despite his more fragile appearance. There are no shortage of obstacles on your journey to not only track down Ashley, but to also escape as well. From hordes of zombified villagers to wicked parasite-infested priests, the game delivers. The boss fights are always an adrenaline rush and are well designed. Speaking of journey, you find yourself in what could possibly be the worst place on Earth at the time. How do you show that visually? What do the worst enemies look and behave like? Well, they nailed all of the above, and I don't see how they could change any of it for the better. There is an impressive amount of enemy types. Right when you think you've seen them all, something new comes your way, and usually it is worse than the last worst enemy. You are constantly on edge due to the sheer amount of adversity standing in your way. Traps and ambushes galore. What waits around the corner toys with your imagination, and I love it. Hear a sound in the distance? Yeah, you'll definitely have to deal with the cause of it at some point later. All I can say is reload and top off your health. The play areas at times may feel small, but with their interconnectivity, the actual amount of zones is massive and sprawling. It is really cool to see how they knit together different areas via underground passages, waterways, and blocked off paths. The amount of detail in the environments and enemy models is extremely impressive. I was constantly getting Demon's Souls Remake and From Software vibes from the amount of detail on display, which is one of the highest compliments. Intense foliage, unique bricks in a wall, lived-in bedrooms, a hunting lodge that was used for such, as antlers hang from ropes and carcass rots on the table. There is an eyeful in every frame, and at times I just couldn't help but to stop and stare. RE4 builds such an atmosphere and immersion that perfectly fits the narrative. The music and sound effects are also fantastic. They add to the tension and crescendo perfectly in sync with the action. Guns sound impactful, and the wet thuds of bullets impacting enemies is gritty.
One down. Let's see you climb this. Waist close.
The speech of the enemies is clear as they will shit talk you in combat, and the ambiance of sound effects and the environment linger in the air. The voice acting is consistently great.
Sacrificial lamb, you will receive our most sacred body. It begins now.
Including Leon, although he is definitely drier and less emotive than the other characters. Shout out to Luis, as he definitely brings a fun and lighthearted attitude to such a dark game.
I'm Luis Serra. I guess you, me, picked the wrongest spot to vacation, eh?
You will mostly be engaging enemies with weapons found or bought from the merchant in-game, who has a creepy way of appearing in the most heated of areas, seemingly as if he has a visitor's pass. He's always accompanied by a purple brazier, and it's always a relief to see him, as you can get a quick breather and prepare to go out in a world that wants you spit roasted over an open fire. He sells you weapons and weapons upgrades, ammo, gear, and other various trinkets to get you through the game. His lines are great, and the iconic "What are you buying?" remains intact. Consider him your unsung sidekick and welcome face in trying time. The combat itself is incredibly satisfying. Shooting enemies of all types never gets old, mostly due to the way they react to getting shot. Headshots with the pistol or rifle cause them to reel back and pause in their track, often allowing you to get off a roundhouse kick that does great damage and saves you ammo. Where things kick up to 10 is when you use a shotgun to engage enemies. I don't think I've ever had so much fun blasting bad guys as much as I do when I used a shotgun in RE4 Remake. Shooting an enemy in the head from fairly close range just blows everything completely off, usually revealing tiny tendrils from the plague they carry that sprout out from the neck. Hit them in the arms, legs, waist, or shoulders, and that's gone too. The impact is so dense and heavy that you see the weight of the blast move through them as they rock backwards and fall to pieces. It's actually incredible, and it never got old even once. Also, the death animations for Leon are numerous and ultra-violent. Getting stabbed with the pitchfork sounds awful and chunks fly. Meeting a madman's chainsaw on the fun end is definitely gruesome. A plague bearer biting your head off is easy work, and it's entertaining to see. And if you're already going to die, well, you might as well get a show. I beat the game, and I'm positive I haven't seen them all. The pacing overall is solid, and every time I thought the action couldn't get more bombastic, it would get more bombastic. Seriously, the amount of times they up the ante from one scene or chapter to the next is to be commended. You'll visit tortured villages, abandoned mines, hidden labs, and traverse a massive castle. Each area grows in spectacle, and the enemies grow with it. Storming a castle, maneuvering a minecart through old shafts, traversing a massive lake. It's action-packed and loaded with variety. The expectations for you to get good are considerable, and you will definitely be challenged. I was absolutely blown away by what a pleasant and entertaining ride this was. From the beginning to the midpoint, I felt that the game was great, but from that midpoint to the end of the game became incredible and deserves all the praise it has received. At this rate, it is going to be incredibly difficult for Capcom to outdo themselves, and I'm interested to see where they choose to go from here. RE5 or Code Veronica Remake? A new game in Resident Evil 9 to continue the decades-long story? The sky is the limit, and I'll be there as long as the quality like this continues. I wholeheartedly recommend this game to anyone who's a fan of Resident Evil, third-person shooters, survival horror, or just enjoys high-quality games. I am absolutely blown away by what this is and represents. Every other remake going forward has been put on notice and will undoubtedly be compared to this, and for good reason. Incredible game. I try not to go too much into detail for a lot of the story and mechanics of the game as far as like interacting, because I want it to be a surprise. I do not like spoilers myself, so I try not to spoil. Well, that does it for my review of the Resident Evil 4 Remake. I want to thank you for spending time with me and hope you enjoyed my review. I appreciate the support, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Well, at least we don't have to worry about being followed. Come on.